So maybe you can pay the bills so that we can have music for our intro. Sorry, I had to do it.
That's a good way of starting this out. Very awkward silence. I had so much queued up. You heard me. You heard the greatness that I had, and it's sampling. I thought it was okay to pay.
Apparently, we're now like really official and have to follow rules. So, music for the next introduction, because our music choices we're not allowed to use them. Crazy world.
Okay, yeah, all right, fine, I understand.
The Muppet Show with our very special guest star, Mr. Steve Martin.
Oh, sorry, never mind.
Great. Is that like Saturday Night Live is now going to come after us?
No.
Hey, they might ask us to be on the show because we can be pretty funny sometimes.
We're funny. We're funny, but we're not as funny as we think we are. I'm funny with my friends. So we're supposed to talk about real estate today. We're going to talk about housing. And I, for one, I just want you to know something, Jen. I, for one, am glad for our industry because I wouldn't want to be outside right now. It's very cold out.
Yeah. And it's raining on top of the snow.
I'm thinking that this indoor thing, living indoors, climate control, like heat, plumbing, this is not a fad. This thing has legs. This has a future, this industry, because it's cold outside. And, exactly. I got nothing against Bedouin nomads. I really don't. I would love to say some of my best friends are Bedouin nomads, but I've never had the pleasure. But I'm just glad that we are indoors and the rent is paid.
Agreed. But there's a slew of buyers out there that, I don't know, I think in some cases have been around several years and haven't been able to purchase their first home. So this has led to a lot of conversations this week in how to handle a buyer where they come into a specific market and they have a very specific price point, a very specific need, and it's just not there.
And they're very specifically shut out because there's not enough inventory and there's 5 or 6 other bids on the property that they want to live in, and they continue to live in mother's basement.
And I've always said it's not my favorite kind of market, a real hardcore seller's market, because oftentimes the realtor can get the blame. They feel like they overpaid or they just keep losing bids. So it's really important that buyer's agent does a thorough buyer's consultation so that buyers can expect what's going to happen. I also truly believe that if you are working with buyers exclusively, you have to be scouring for sale by owners. You have to be scouring past expireds. There's a moratorium on calling expireds, but you absolutely can reach out to expireds in other ways. And not only recent expireds, go back well over a year. I guarantee you there's a whole pocket of sellers that just don't want to list their house right now during a pandemic, number one. But number two, they're afraid they can't find something to purchase, which you can protect a seller contractually. And if you have an attorney who's not willing to do that, I think I have the workaround for that. But you got to find an attorney that's willing to do that. And should it cost more? Probably.
Attorneys are the most underpaid party in the real estate transaction.
Agreed.
So let's talk briefly about why there's such a low inventory. Okay. And yes, there's a pandemic, right? There's a pandemic. I think one of the chief reasons, though, why there is a low inventory right now is because we made it this way with manipulation of the market. And I'll explain. When the market was a buyer's market, they continued to lower interest rates to induce buyers to get out to the market. Fair enough. But when you have low interest rates, the purchase money is not the only thing that is borrowed. Current sellers, current owners refinance. So the same people that live in the house that you want to buy, who would be paying, who bought the house at 8% 25 years ago, just refied into 2.5%, 3.25%. And that causes them to stay an artificially longer time than they would otherwise with normal life circumstances, because taxes are high. It's crazy out there. They don't know where they're going to live. But also, we're paying 2.5%. We like that. We like that very much. So we've created a bubble, because the only way to induce these people to sell is to throw more money at them. So we're creating a bubble. So I think that's how we got here. And it's not going to be solved overnight. We do expect more inventory to come in the spring, but it's not nearly going to be enough to serve the demand. So we need to talk about what buyers can do. So we need to set their expectations for sure. What else can we do as their advocacy?
Well, we can teach them about escalation clauses. We can teach them that there are other things that may pique an owner's interest, such as flexibility in closing, the willing to go to contract while the seller finds a place. There's one other thing, though, I think that also contributes.
Like my yellow legal pad?
Yes. One other thing, though, that contributes, I think, that's not taken into consideration too often, and especially in our areas, is there's a lack of not low income, of affordable housing going up as new construction. Most of the new construction that goes up is in the higher end at this point. There's very few new condos. Most of them are luxury. So we're not talking about subsidized low-income housing. We're talking about affordable housing.
Yeah, just regular starter homes.
Right? 26-year-old who has a decent job is able to purchase. Or, a million different scenarios. People who get divorced and perhaps need a transition place for a few years. There's really nothing out there for them. And you could so that's not coming into the market either. So I think that has an impact as well.
A lot of reasons. So I have close people in my sphere who've asked me, is it a good time to buy? And, I'm paid to sell them property. And I've said, no, it's not a very good time to buy. And, if you have to buy, we have so many buyers that, we really don't need to create baloney reasons why they should buy. We don't have enough inventory. If you don't have to buy, it's really okay to stay put.
Yeah.
If you don't have to buy.
But if you really want to buy and you have to sell, you should be selling. And maybe, perhaps, that extra $75,000 or whatever it is that you would get in this market compared to the market behind us and the market ahead of us eventually, you might be able to factor in a temporary rental, and it's only going to cost you 1/10 of the profit that you would make.
Absolutely.
Or like lots of other, family members and whatnot. So it may be awkward and uncomfortable, but it may be necessary in order for you financially. If you're someone that needs that extra 50, whatever amount of money, 50,000 that you can get on a transaction, then now's the time to take advantage of it.
Strike while the iron is hot. So let's talk about real quick, stupid stuff. Want to talk about stupid stuff?
Sure.
Here's some stupid stuff. Even in this market where a buyer has to supplicate themselves before the seller, escalation clauses, bidding wars, and everything like that, we still have prospective buyers out there that are coy about showing proof of funds or a pre-approval. I'll get you the pre-approval when I find the house that I want to.
I think a lot of that is in the approach. It sounds like one of my favorite lines, and I hate to call it a line. One of my favorite discussions with a seller in that, with a buyer in that situation, is that we need to get you pre-approved. Getting a pre-approval is going to give you more buying power.
Yep.
And nowadays, you can barely show a property without it. Most of the sellers are requiring a pre-approval because they don't want looky-loos in their house during a pandemic. They want serious buyers.
And God bless them for asking.
Yeah, agreed.
God bless them for asking. If it were up to me, every buyer would have to produce an ID, because you need one for a $3,000 used car.
Mm-hmm.
So why not for $500,000
Agreed.
property? A pre-approval letter, and whatever medical, COVID disclosure, whatever. We should have a lot on you before we, as they say, put you in the car, and we don't put you in the car anymore.
And quite frankly, buyers appreciate not having to waste their time too. They're just predisposed to thinking that that's part of the process, and it's not.
Mhm.
Why are we going to look at houses where the taxes are $2,000 a year too high for you? You can't. It's not the price point. It's the taxes.
This is not a looky-loo market.
Yeah, and nobody really wants to be. I remember when I was working, in the field with buyers and sellers, I would say, look, I don't work Saturdays. So we're going to plan every Sunday from 9 to 11, blah, blah, blah. And by narrowing it down, they were grateful. They didn't want to spend their, figuring out how do we do this, how do we go this day and how do we go that day, having that one steady time a week. And also, all the other professional requests are really to their benefit. So I think a lot of it is how that's being communicated.
Okay, so you have to buy, all right? For one reason or another, you have to buy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Throwing a scenario, okay? You need to have a good buyer's agent.
Mm-hmm.
If only for this reason, by the way. Let's forget about the fact that it's the largest transaction of your life and you should not make it a do-it-yourself project, okay? And I laugh when someone calls on a property and they say, oh, you're not the listing agent? I want to talk to the listing agent. That's like being a defendant and wanting to talk directly to the prosecutor, by the way. And it's not an adversarial thing, but it is something where what you say, confidentiality is out the window. So stupid stuff. You need a good buyer's agent. You need an agent that has local knowledge. You need an agent that understands how to negotiate, especially in this market. You need an agent that has the goodwill of other agents. And we seldom talk about that. But if you use some agent, you just, a glorified door unlocker, you have done no vetting of them. You probably treat them like they're a waiter. They don't have much experience. And you just tell them, obedience. So just throw a low ball offer and they do it because they're hungry.
Right.
That's not a really good agent for you.
Well, and it's a complete waste of time for you.
It's a complete waste of everyone's time, right down the entire transaction chain, because more stupid stuff, ready? When we get an incomplete or poorly presented offer, that offer has no chance because it has too much competition. And we think to ourselves, why is this poor slob who's trying to buy a house using this dip to put the best face possible on their offer? They have no shot. Dead on arrival. You've gotten these phone calls. Hi, Jen. It's Phil Ferranda. I don't want to waste anybody's time. Your $500,000 listing. Would they take $450,000? Do I have to present that? I have to present that? We have to present all offers. Why? Why would you waste my time? We have 3 other offers right now. We've only been on the market a week. Why are you wasting our time?
Yeah.
So
and in this kind of market, there's also some other intricacies that I think everybody needs to be aware of. Number one is feedback. I've had the experience and I'm pretty rigid with providing feedback. If I do, let me just give this scenario. So it was a market like this and the buyers went through the inventory and it came to a point where that's it. They had to buy. They went back through the inventory that they already rejected. Mm-hmm. Come to a house that this was many years ago when feedback first came out, that we kind of responded, there was a funny odor here and we didn't like this and we didn't like that. And now we created an emotional scenario between buyer and seller, which is one of the key roles of a realtor. Why is the buyer's agent, am I giving my cards away to the seller and the seller's agent?
Okay. Feedback.
Custom.
Feedback is stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Feedback is stupid.
You made an educated decision with your seller on pricing. Why do you want the opposition to be poking holes in your boat? It just doesn't make any sense.
It's also not our job to advise them. on what they could do better. It really isn't.
No, it's not. That's why they hired the professional that they did to list the property.
So there may be people older than I am. I'm 53, who remember the days before feedback was really a big thing. But I think we as an industry invented feedback as an add-on service to get the listing, not realizing that we would create a monster.
Yeah.
Because it is a waste of time.
Yep.
So picture this. There's a showing. Now, what's the only feedback that matters? I know you know the answer.
An offer.
An offer, right. If there's no offer, that's your feedback. If there is an offer, that's your feedback. If there's no offer, there's no objection I can rebut to make them want the house.
Right.
Okay? So, all right, here's the feedback. Your driveway is a ski slope. You didn't know that? You didn't know your driveway was vertical? You didn't know that you had a drive. You didn't know that your house backed up to the interstate? Really? You didn't know that? You didn't know that the paneling throughout the entire house was dated? You need somebody to tell you that? Feedback is a waste of time. It is an exercise in futility to make us look busy.
Yep. Exactly. And then the other thing in this type of market, stop driving the listing broker crazy. I just have a few questions for you before I submit an offer. No. Get the offer in. If it needs to be tweaked based on something that you didn't know or didn't find out, and how about you Google and call the town before you call the listing broker? I understand foreclosure agents or distressed REO brokers, why they get the way that they get, because every time they put a listing on, they are inundated with 250 questions that could have been answered by doing your due diligence and or could have been answered after there's an actual offer. I had a buyer's agent recently trying to have me resolve appraisal issues before we even had an accepted offer. I said, first of all, that goes against my fiduciary responsibility. I have it listed where I don't think we will have an appraisal issue. I cannot have that conversation with you until we have a deal.
Mm-hmm.
Because then we're on the same page.
Right.
So,
okay. So, funny you should mention this. I just have a few questions. Due diligence. All right. Many buyers would faint if they knew the short length that their buyer agent went to do due diligence instead of the long length that they should go to.
mm-hmm.
So you can, if you're a buyer's agent, you can and should go to the building department and make sure that the property card matches the listing.
Mm-hmm.
You should be familiar with zoning. You should be familiar with the setback rules and everything like that. You should be familiar with a lot of things. And when you call the listing agent to verify something, you're being lazy.
Yep.
Give you a prime example. I've gotten 1,000 phone calls like this. I see that the taxes on your listing are $12,500. Is that up to date? Did you check that? Sure. No, actually, I flipped a coin and I decided that would be the taxes. So when you get to closing and a new tax year arrives, or you don't, I made a mistake, whatever, you haven't verified the taxes yourself. Now we have a responsibility as listing agents to put the correct taxes in there.
Yeah.
But that does not release the buyer's agent from doing their own due diligence when they can go to primary resources, i.e. the building department, the assessor, whatever, and get those things from the horse's mouth, because we are not their due diligence.
Agreed. And in these times where we don't necessarily get to go into the building department or into the tax assessor's office, because I always trained, make sure you sign the book so there's a record of it. So keep it in your file, make note, call the tax assessor this day, this time, this is what I was told. And I had it happen to me when on a deal, I was working with the buyer and Town of Carmel did their reval. I called and said, what do we think is going to happen? And they were just like, I don't know. So I guessed like maybe 5%. Those taxes went up 19% before the closing. Now, had I not had my record, as soon as I hung up with the tax assessor, I emailed as soon as I left the building department, because back then you could go in, I emailed my seller, let him know the answer. That one email stopped that buyer, I'm sorry, from blaming me, you know? So even though it turned out that it was wrong or I didn't have the right amount, I got it from the horse's mouth that they didn't think it would be more than 5%. It's 18%.
Those were the before days when we could go into the building department.
Yes.
But now you can get on the internet, you can call, you can do these things. If sometimes you have to file a FOIL request, which is silly, but you can do those things. The moral of the story is that there's a lot of money and consequences riding on this, and the buyer agent needs to do their job, and the consumer needs to make sure that they choose the correct representation because it's competitive out there, and you need the best jockey on your horse.
Yep. An attorney that's going to be responding to contracts within 24 hours. And they need to ask if it's their family friend that's been doing, are you too busy? Can you handle this? We need an attorney who's going to be able to turn it around immediately.
So this is where, by the way, this is where a good agent's Rolodex, am I dating myself? Rolodex, our filing cabinet.
My husband still has a Rolodex.
Our contact list, our sphere, is priceless. All right. Because the attorney that you use, what did I just say before? The attorneys are underpaid in these transactions because they're doing the contract work on the largest transaction of these people's lives most of the time. All right. You should have the best possible real estate attorney who understands the local market representing you, and not someone who's $200 cheaper that you got out of the yellow pages. Ouch. Sorry. Off the internet. I could tell you stories, you could too, Jen, of people that used a cut rate attorney, fly by night, whatever you want to say, cheap attorney, and they paid for it. It cost them more money in the long run because their attorney was not on top of things, didn't properly advocate for them, didn't properly read the contract, didn't properly do the whole thing, and they're at the behest of they're at the mercy of some overworked, underpaid paralegal, and they have no idea how poor the representation is. So you need the best attorney.
Agreed. And then what's super important, and I see people do all the time, buyer's agent not doing their own memo. Why are you relying? Now, look, if you took your time and you went line by line by line, okay, maybe you can be lazy enough to do your own memo. Okay. But typically, every single thing that was negotiated on this transaction needs to be, what's that word?
Memorialized. In writing.
In the memo. So if the attorney, right, in this crazy market doesn't make sure that the rider specifies whatever's in that memo or making changes in the contract, the buyer's agent is protected. But more than that, typically that will help the attorney to pick up anything that either needs to be in there or is not in there. They're not the seller's memo. They could change it after you say, yeah, this is good. They could send a different memo. You need to represent your buyers and get every single thing that was agreed upon into that memo.
So one of the things you should put in the memo is inclusions and exclusions. Mm-hmm. We had a incident down the street from me. I'm calling it an incident, but there was a big kerfuffle because the seller had a really nice washer dryer and they were taking it with them, and it was not listed in the inclusions. And the buyer's agent put on her offer inclusions per MLS instead of specifying what the buyer wanted. And when it came right down to who's right, I said, you can explain. I said to the buyer's attorney, you can explain to your client why their agent lost them the deal over a washer dryer because she was too lazy to type out washer and dryer when it was not indicated in the MLS. It was very satisfying to say, by the way.
And always attach a copy of the listing. Yes, miss, you don't have to print it. You can print it as a PDF. Copy of the listing of that day. I've seen listings change where they remove the washer and dryer after, and if it's not in the memo, it's too late. I've seen commission be changed. So you always attach a copy, a live time-stamped copy of that listing.
Having it in writing prevents the sneaky stuff.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of moving parts, right? Yeah. A lot of moving parts.
Well, listen, is it super sneaky if, if the buyer's agent, you never discussed it and the buyer's agent didn't put it in the memo and the seller decides they want to take it,
No, I'll
it's
tell you
not
what's
something I would do, but it's not even like illegal. These things have to be crystal clear.
What's sneaky is it's in the MLS. You make an offer, and then it's taken out of the MLS. Or what's sneaky on the other side is when they bury inside their offer a higher commission, and they think that no response is consent.
Right. No, I agree. So the bottom line is it's definitely a tricky market, but not one that you should be afraid of as long as you hire the right team.
That is the moral of the story. It's crazy out there right now. It's crazy out there. And you need the right team, or don't bother coming to the game.
Snow's not helping. The snow also prevents people from getting the house on the market, throws everything off. So
I never understood that because, I want to wait till the flowers, when your
I
flowers.
brought the flowers. I brought the flowers today.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, it's very nice. I don't have a virtual background.
I notice. Mine is a little shaky, but it's better than it was.
I usually have a green screen.
Yeah.
I don't know how you did the virtual background on this platform because I
have wait, before you log in, I'll show you. So I have a green screen behind me and then the virtual background.
Very fancy. Very fancy.
Well,
right.
This has been interested.
We're done?
I think that's a wrap.
Jennifer, I like talking to you.
Well, I like talking to you.
We do well together.
Yes.
Yeah, we do. We should do this weekly.
Every week?
Don't you think?
Yes.
I think
for sure.
Week.
All right. Well, until next week.
Until next week. Same bat channel. Oh, am I not allowed to say that?